Did a vampire game die before it's even undead? That's what the gaming world is grappling with as we're getting more and more information on Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, the sequel that was announced years and years ago to the cult classic Vampire the Masquerade game. In my opinion, it's one of the best RPGs ever made. It's moody, it places a heavy emphasis on role-playing, you have to make actual decisions that affect your game, you're given incentives to replay. I think it's really only comparable to Fallout New Vegas and how good it is. It's based off the tabletop role-playing game World of Darkness, and it takes place in a world just like ours, but monsters exist and attempt to hide in plain sight. Well, some more than others. So, vampires exist, and they have a secret society, and there are many rules they're forced to follow to stay hidden and survive another night. It's called the Masquerade. Hence, Vampire the Masquerade. Of course, there's other creatures, there's also werewolves, ghosts, mummies, and a myriad of other creatures that all exist. People have long wanted a sequel. Unfortunately, the developer that made the game went under shortly after releasing Vampire the Masquerade. It actually sold less than 100,000 copies all the way back in 2003, 2004. But Paradox, back in around, I believe, 2015, bought the rights to the World of Darkness, and in 2019 they announced a sequel. But since being announced, it has had a very troubled development cycle. The first developer of the sequel was Hardsuit Labs, which I always thought was a strange choice because they've only developed a free FPS game, and every other project they've worked on, it was just as a contractor. I've actually been following this game for a very long time. Even on this channel, if you look back at some of my old videos, I made a couple of Vampire the Masquerade 2 videos, mostly just talking about what it was going to look like, what they've been up to. But since then, Hardsuit Labs was taken off the game, which is very, very rare in video games, leading to the Chinese Room, the developer, taking over all the way back in 2021. It's since been stuck in development hell. I mean, it was first announced in 2019, it was supposed to release in 2021, and when it was first announced, the hype was real. And the game also seemed much more in line with what people thought a sequel would look like. In the original story, you were going to play as a freshly turned vampire, otherwise known as a Thin Blood, in the World of Darkness. A Thin Blood is a vampire who has no clan. Okay, there's a lot of background I have to establish. Each vampire, when they're turned into a vampire, have a clan, which allows them to access certain abilities, and that all goes back to the original vampires, sort of. Again, you can watch a lot of videos on this. I'm really just trying to talk about the game right now. But just know in the original story, you were going to play as a Thin Blood, which is a vampire who does not have a lot of skills and abilities compared to other vampires. They're just generally weaker, and they're a somewhat new phenomenon in the Vampire the Masquerade world. You were turned into a vampire after a mass turning happened in Seattle, where a vampire turned like 50 people at a time into a vampire, which is a big no-no in vampire society. Typically, to induct somebody into becoming a vampire, you have to get permission from the prince of the city where you live. And the prince is essentially just the vampire in charge of that city. You have to get permission. So obviously, somebody turning 50 people into vampires at a time, yeah, no, that's not allowed. But from what we did see from the original game, there was a heavy emphasis on dialogue and player freedom. Hardsuit Labs, the original developer, even brought the original writer from the first Vampire the Masquerade game to help make the game. But after initial announcements and trailers, really only bad news started to come from the studio. They delayed the game multiple times, multiple writers were cut from the studio, including the original writer for the first game that they brought on. It seems like the game might have even been cancelled, but that's when the publisher Paradox stepped in and assigned a new team to the game, the Chinese Room. They still had their work cut out for them, even inheriting a half-finished game. But they did keep a lot of the setting and assets. But the Chinese Room did decide to completely rework the story and remove certain playable clans. Many people thought the game would just be canned, but Paradox, already investing so much money into it, decided against that course of action. And now, years later, after the dust settled, it's finally releasing soon. We have new trailers, the game was given to a few streamers, so we actually got to see multiple hours of gameplay. And it seems like most people are disappointed. And of course, it's fine if you think it looks good. I think it looks fun enough. But I think what's really causing issues is the fact that it's supposed to be a follow-up to one of the best RPGs ever made. A game with a focus on dialogue, sneaking around, and finding your way in a new dark world that you never knew about, is being followed up by a game that seems much more like an action RPG than an RPG. From what I can tell, there's no inventory, you can't wield guns and other weapons other than by awkwardly using telekinesis. I think the combat generally seems fine, it seems to flow well and looks really flashy. It reminds me a lot of Dishonored. But the much bigger issue is the lack of skills and the fact that the game seems to focus heavily on combat. Now, of course, in the original, there was a lot of combat. In fact, it's somewhat infamous for the later parts of the game being all about combat, even though that was never the emphasis. But that's more due to them running low on funding and not being able to add more stuff like they wanted to later in the game. But another key point of contention is the fact that you now play as Fire, an elder vampire who is around 400 years old, who is now awoken in Seattle. So your character already has an established backstory and are a character of immense power. You're not a neonite, which is the vampire word for a new vampire. A key part of the first game was that you and your character are new to the world. You're able to ask questions about how things work and learn about the world and vampires in a natural way. In the new game, you're going to be playing as somebody who's inhabited the world for hundreds of years, and your character should already have an innate knowledge of vampire politics and powers. They shouldn't be lost or confused or feel weak. I think it's just going to be less immersive and raise a lot of questions for players. Or you're going to be able to ask obvious questions to other characters, but you're going to be asking things your character should already have an intimate knowledge about. I think most players would prefer to play as a new vampire, finding out their place in the world, not playing as an elder vampire with tons of experience. This just feels like a major departure from the first game, which, again, that is fine. The first game was a while ago, but it seems like the game wants to have different DNA, even though it's supposed to be a sequel. I kind of wish this game didn't have the Bloodlines title attached to it. Like, this might be a great action game. It might be a good game set in the world of darkness. But it doesn't seem like the Bloodlines 2. But this is all just begging the big question, can this game still work? Will it be fun? Will most people like it? Right now, I'm sort of leaning towards no. Most people online don't seem excited for it. It seems like old players who love the original are very skeptical towards the new title. And it seems like it's not doing enough to interest new players who aren't familiar with the world and franchise in the first game. It feels like this new game is just a cash grab, and I don't think it started out that way. I obviously don't mean to disrespect any of the developers, but I think Paradox is just having the studio release something so they can recoup some of the money that they've thrown into this game over the long development period. I like to be hopeful, you know, video games are supposed to be fun, but I just don't see this game being successful or critically acclaimed. It just seems to have a lot working against it, and a lot of the things working against it are self-imposed. So, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys think Bloodlines 2 is going to deliver something special? It kind of feels like this vampire is already in the coffin. That's a bad joke. I mean, I'm really not sure. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see how the game turns out when it actually releases. And if you want to blast from the past, go check out some of my old videos on what the original Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 was supposed to look like. It's honestly night and day. But that's really all I got. I mean, I was generally pretty excited for this game. I mean, if you check back on my Reddit history, I remember talking to this in the subreddit like years ago, saying I was pretty excited. And I still honestly will. This is me being an actual consumer. Yeah, I probably am going to buy it, even after making this whole video bitching about how I think it's not going to be as good. Which I still do believe, but I honestly love the universe of the World of Darkness. If you are into the World of Darkness universe at all, or just want to learn more, Choice of Games, they sort of make interactive fiction, you could call it, visual novels without the visuals. They have a bunch of books set in the universe, in the World of Darkness. You can play as a werewolf, as a vampire hunter. I would definitely go check out some of those. But that's really all I got. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that cool stuff. And remember that Jesus loves you.